All right, third graders, we are going to be making a 3D pie slice in the style of Wayne Thiebaud with those bright colored shadows and everything else they talked about in that video. So we are going to start with our black paper. You should have your name on one side written in pencil, and then we're going to flip it over and we'll draw the pie slice together. Since we're drawing it 3D, we're going to draw one side first. So I'm going to start with a really large rectangle right in the center, and I want it to be kind of long and skinny. So I'm going to draw my vertical lines first, leaving a little bit of space on both sides, and then connect those, leaving space on the top and bottom. All right, that way we have space down here for the plate and space up here for the top of the pie. So next I'm going to draw the top of the pie, and it's going to be at an angle since we're looking at a three-dimensional shape. So from the left side corner, I'm going to draw a short diagonal line, and then I'm going to connect a long diagonal line to the right side corner. Just clean that up a little bit. Okay, so now I've got the top of my pie. We're going to draw the crust on the short diagonal line. So I'm going to start with a vertical line on both sides, just a short one, and then I'm going to connect it with a wavy line. So curve over and under, over, under, over. Perfect. And then the last thing I'm going to sketch out is the plate. And I want the plate to look like it's beneath the pie, that the pie is overlapping the plate. So I'm going to start about halfway up this vertical line right here, and I'm going to draw a long oval that curves out and around, kind of an ellipse shape. I'm going to go under the bottom of the pie, and I'm going to try to match this same curve on the other side. So I'm going to start in about the same spot, curve around, and connect. So there is my pie slice and my plate. So the rest of it, we're going to be using oil pastels. And you should have a tray on your table with some brown and white oil pastels. And we're going to need a light brown and a dark brown. Doesn't have to be the exact two pastels that I'm using. And then a white pastel. So I'm going to start with the crust. And here on the inside of my pie, that big rectangle that we drew, I'm going to outline the right side and the bottom side. So I'm just drawing right over my pencil lines. And then I'm going to thicken those two lines, almost make a tall, skinny rectangle here and a long, skinny rectangle here to kind of show the back and the bottom of the crust. And the rest of the space is going to be the pie filling. So I'm going to fill that in with my light brown. We're going to use the dark brown to make shadows. I'm going to use the light brown first. Okay. And then I'm going to color this wavy line area of the crust that we drew. So I'm going to outline it first. Just draw right over my pencil lines. And then I'm going to color that in all the way. Okay. There's my crust there. We're going to add shadows to this part of the crust before we add the top. And this is going to be really similar to what we did on our camels. So I'm going to take my dark brown and I'm going to color with my dark brown all the way around this shape that we just filled in first. And with oil pastels, you can blend them easily by just overlapping the two colors. So after I outline, I'm just kind of coloring over that light brown a little bit, not very hard, kind of lightly all the way around that shape to sort of blend my light and dark brown. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this area down here. So I'm going to go on the inside of the crust here. And I'm going to kind of color my outline and then blend. And I'll do this on the top of that bottom edge there. I'm going to color my darker outline at the top there and then sort of blend it a little. Just lightly coloring over that light brown to blend the two colors together. All right, now we'll work on the top crust, which we're going to make it look like a lattice. So almost like a lattice is almost like weaving the pie crust, just like we did on our camel project. So I'm going to start again with my light brown, and I'm going to copy this angle. I'm going to leave some space for the filling, and then I'm going to draw this same line about maybe ½ an inch away, and I'm going to stop at my pencil line here. And I'm going to make this a thick rectangle. So I'm just outlining the pencil lines that are already there on the top and bottom of my triangle, and then I'll fill that in. And then I'm going to leave another gap and do the same thing. Each one's going to get shorter as my triangle gets smaller. And I'll do, it looks like I have room for one more here. And yours might be a little different. That's okay if it is. All right, now I want us to imagine an X. So if this were to have a line, a diagonal line going the opposite direction, we're going to start with this first line here because it's the easiest. And I'm going to draw an X, and then I'm going to thicken that line up just like I did and color it in just like I did on the first ones. And then again, I'm going to look for another X here. Make sure that when you're coloring these in, you're leaving these gaps. You don't want to color it all the way in. I've got room for one more X here. And then if I look at these three lines, if I were to keep going with the same distance, I might have another one here. And I'm going to check. I think I don't have room for one at the tip. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Now I'm going to switch back to my dark brown, and I'm going to outline each one of those shapes and kind of blend the dark brown with the light brown. Now, whichever shape you do first on the X, we're going to outline the whole shape. So I'm just doing all of my diagonal lines that are kind of going to the right here first. And then on the next set, I'm just going to skip over so it looks like it's overlapping. So I'm only doing the sections that aren't on top. Okay, and I still left all my little gaps there. I'm going to add one more line across the very top of my rectangle here, just a thin line with my light brown, just to kind of show the edge of that crest. And then we're going to be finished with our crust. So I'm going to put my light and dark brown back in the tray so those stay separate. And I'm going to look in the basket for a few different colors. We are going to be making kind of a berry-filled pie, so I want to pick out colors that remind me of berries. So I'm going to get some pinks, purples, or blues. And you can choose any three, any combination, a pink, a purple, a blue, or it could be a red, a purple, and a blue, any version of these. It could be a different pink, a different purple, a different blue. Just get one of each. We're going to start with the lightest one, so the pink or the red, whichever pink or red you have. And we're going to color in the filling on the pie first. I like to always outline the shape I'm going to fill in, just so I don't accidentally color over the pastel that's already there or mix it. So I'm going to kind of do my edges first here, and I'm coloring all the way in. And then I'm going to fill in this whole space. Pushing down hard with that pastel so that it fully covers the black paper under. And then I'm also going to do that on all of these little gaps on the top of my pie where the filling would show through that lattice. So I like to, again, outline first and then fill in each one of those little spaces. Gotta look for those pencil lines. Make sure you're filling everything inside the pencil lines, even if you have little tiny spaces at the top or the bottom of that triangle shape. All right, now once I've done that with my pink or red, I'm going to move on to my purple, and I'm going to create a texture that kind of looks like berry filling by making swirly lines or loopy lines. So I'm just going to go over the pink with another layer, this time just textured, not coloring it all the way in. And I'm going to do the same thing on all my little spaces at the top. Probably won't have a whole lot of coloring here. They're pretty small. And then I'm going to repeat that step one last time with my blue to kind of create shadows. This is my darkest color, that's why I saved it for last. I'm going to go through that middle section and then all the little sections at the top. I'm not scribbling, I'm drawing swirls or circular spiral lines, not just a bunch of scribbles. All right, now I'm going to get rid of all these little oil pastel crumbs by just tapping my paper or shaking my paper. You don't want to swipe your hand across it because it will smear. All right, the next step we're going to do is the plate, and you'll have your white oil pastel out for that. And we're going to begin by coloring that whole plate in white. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with my berry filling, which is outline it first and kind of outline around my pie here. And then I'm going to color it all the way in, doing my best to fill it in all the way so my black paper is not really showing through. And I'm trying not to go out of my line so I keep that nice straight edge on my oval. All right, now when we look at this picture right now, our pie looks really 3D, but our plate looks very flat. It's just a flat shape because it doesn't have any shadows. So we're going to use those same two oil pastels that we used for the filling, the blue and the purple, to add some shadows to the plate. So I'm going to start by creating the edge of the plate so that it looks like one side is sort of facing me and then the plate is turning here. So I'm going to start under the top edge of my plate over here by the pie with my my purple oil pastel. And I'm going to draw a line, leaving a little edge of white that curves down and around and then touches right about here on the edge. And I do kind of have to push hard to break through that white oil pastel. So around the edge here, I'm going to repeat that same step on the other side. Okay, and that kind of gives the illusion that the edge of the plate is turning, and now down here it will be in front of us. Now for the bottom edge of the plate, I'm actually going to color it all in purple. So I'm going to add from that point where the purple touches the edge of the plate, I'm going to add a thick purple edge all the way across the bottom. Connects to this line over here. And we're using purple for our shadow color because it's kind of in the style of Wayne Thiebaud. He doesn't just use black and gray for shadows. He likes to use colors. Make really bold, colorful shadows. All right, then the next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of a shadow under the pie. And underneath this bottom edge of the pie, I'm just going to add a thin line on. I'm going over the white. Just add a little bit of a shadow here. But then we're going to create a cast shadow at the back of the pie so that it looks like the light's shining from the front and casting a shadow behind the pie. So the only part of that cast shadow we would see would be right here. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line from this bottom edge of the pie up to the purple line on my plate here. And I'm going to fill it in with purple. And I am mixing my purple and white. I'm just layering it over and blending it together. Now we're going to go in and add a second layer of shadows to create darker shadows in some areas. And I'm going to switch to my blue. And I'm going to add a blue shadow at the top edge of my plate here at the bottom. So I'm going to start right about here and just draw a blue shadow kind of layering over my purple. It's going to make it look a little darker. Just across that top edge. It's really just a line. I'm not coloring in the whole purple edge. And then I'm also going to layer over the cast shadow back here. Make that cast shadow a little bit darker than the shadow under the pie by just blending my blue over my purple here, kind of creating a blue-violet or indigo color. All right. Next, we're going to add one more shadow. This is going to be the shadow of the plate. So if your pie is casting a shadow, your plate will be casting a shadow too. So we're going to create kind of in the same space, kind of on the left side here, another cast shadow for the plate. And I'm going to mimic the curve of this plate right below it. So right here under the plate, I'm still using my blue. I'm going to draw kind of a little curved line here that looks like the edge of my plate, and I'm going to kind of connect it to the bottom edge of my plate here where the purple is, and then I'm going to continue all the way across with just a thin line of blue under the purple to the other side of the plate where that curve starts is where I'll stop, so right about there. And I'm going to fill this little curve in with blue. So we're going to make that dark cast shadow here. And then I'm going to add one little second layer here like I did on my other shadows, but this time I am going to use black. So I'm going to find a black oil pastel in my basket, and I'm going to add just a darker black shadow right along the edge here. So I'm going to start at the top of that blue shape that we just drew. I might make it a little thicker on this side. And then I'm just going to go right between the blue and purple, the bottom of the plate, to make that blue shadow a little darker. And you can blend this. Just press lighter and you can kind of blend your black and blue together a little bit. I accidentally colored over it here, so I'm going to go back and add a little more. Okay, and there is my Mattivi Pie Slice looking 3D.